Hey, Buffett, things are twisted in America. Ne? America is a first world country. So you would suppose that they are very much advanced in technology, in education, in understanding basically of everything that pertains to how the world is and how the world is run. But for some strange reason, Americans are failing to understand simple biology. Listen to this hearing.
First of all, I want to say thank you for being here. You are four incredibly brave women, and you're my heroes. You have been willing to put yourselves out there to address something that many people want you to stop talking. They want to prevent you from talking. Don't listen to them. Make sure that you continue to use your voice to educate us, to educate the American people, because these children are worth saving. Dr. Bowens, I want to thank you for being here. And in your testimony, you reference what I think is one of the more important points in this debate, and that children are treated as special and a vulnerable class in the psychological and research fields. You reference the experience of at Tuskegee, and to me, the important takeaway here is that controversial so-called healthcare practices, treatments, and experience have not always withstood the test of time. Outside of your reference, I think of how lobotomy was once a form of care we wouldn't even consider today, and in fact has been banned in countries throughout the world. In this debate, I have wanted to replace the misleading terminology gender-affirming care, especially as it relates to children, because one, it replaces the biological reality of sex, and two, because it falsely suggests that using the term affirming that there is anything good going on here. There are only two sexes, boys or girls, or boys are boys, yet girls are girls, and one cannot become the other. In fact, and especially when it comes to children, it seems to me that gender-affirming care is better described as sexual lobotomy. It is treatment that is fundamentally and permanently alters the sexuality and medical and psychological well-being of these patients. It causes irreversible sterilization and serious long-term medical complications and long-term reliance on pharmaceuticals. These treatments and surgeries are controversial medical practices that seek to change a person in a manner which is not actually achievable, and they will not withstand the test of time. Dr. Bowens, are there medical professionals in the US and abroad already rejecting these surgeries as any form of serious medical care?
So she's basically talking about um, transitioning children in this so-called gender affirming care. So if a child, for an example, comes to you as a parent saying that I was born in the wrong body, then what you should do, you should affirm them, take them to the affirming care through psychology, and then from there they will be exposed to um, hormone treatment, and then subsequently they will be exposed to the actual change of their organ, the sexual organ. So if they identify as a female, then they will be changed to becoming a female. If they identify as a male, they will be changed to becoming a male. So that's what she's addressing basically. So she's asking then an expert's opinion here. Not that we need experts to know that this is a facade, but nevertheless, let's just hear them in their folly. It assists sometimes when you hear people making these assertions to get a better understanding of how privileged we are to know the truth that we cannot change the state in which we find ourselves. For an example, they talk about gender assignment at birth. There are people who gives an impression that you are assigned to be a boy or a girl at birth. It's really, the world out there is like up is down and down is up. It's ridiculous, but let's hear them out.
Yes, thank you for your question. And we are seeing an increase of medical professionals speaking out. Just this past week, there were 21 doctors that came out and said, we are very concerned about this. The own AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, was referenced earlier, and 80% of their membership has been asking for a review of the literature, and they've been denied that review by the upper echelon. So there are, and I've listed many other countries, there are people who are standing up because they're seeing the harms done to these kids like Chloe Cole.
Can you discuss why referring to these treatments as
The higher echelons, of course, as a state, is the government. Now, when the government starts to lord it over people, it's time for that government to go. It doesn't matter where it is. It's time for it to go.
life-saving treatment is so extremely misleading?
Yeah, it's misleading for a number of reasons, because for one, the whole impetus of the scientific method is that we're discovering things. We're supposed to be in a process of, is this the right approach or not? And this whole discussion about saying that it's life-saving automatically says there's no room for discussion, there's no room for scientific inquiry, because the science is settled, which is, it's an amazing statement, because the suicide literature has been around far longer than the transgender literature, and the suicide literature is not conclusive. So we have a real, right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing in this case.
It seems to me what we've been living through for the last couple of years is a government that wants to suppress any type of speech that it disagrees with. And we're seeing that with the industrial censorship complex that we've been talking about. And it appears that that's exactly what's going on here. They want to stop the debate because they know that they can't win it. Dr. Bowens, my last question is what is the success rate of sex change operations?
Well, we have, it's hard to find longer-term data with children, but what the data that we do have, which is probably the most reliable data point available, is from a Swedish study, and it looked at over 10 years, which is really important because regret doesn't just happen a year after some sort of transition. And what you see is a suicide rate that's associated with 19 times higher than the general population.
Well, actually, there is a 0%, there's a 100% failure rate for sex change operations, isn't there? Because it's not possible to change your sex.
That's right.
100% failure rate for these procedures.
Wow, that is mind-blowing. And this is what, by the way, the EFF in our country is supporting when they support transgenderism and the Pride Month, and Julius Malema wraps himself in a pride flag. That's what they are supporting. Something that they have not given much thought to, because this is a scientific issue and it needs to be settled that way. A discussion, a debate needs to unfold. Once children start identifying as things that they are not, it becomes ridiculous. I mean, okay, let me not get into that tangent right now. Let's just focus on the facts. Did you hear that she said it's 100% failure rate?
That's right. You can't change your sex.
Thank you, and I yield back.
My name is Chloe Cole.
Before the testimony of this child. That's mind-blowing, guys. I don't care who says what. That is mind-blowing. This is a truth that they have been suppressing at the pretext of fighting for the rights of trans people, right? Giving an impression that people are born that way. And this born that way argument is their, what you call it, is their A game. So they have to persuade people that, you see, this is it's like being born black. When you're being discriminated against for your blackness, you can't change your blackness. So they create an impression that these people are born that way. Well, we found out recently, in fact, here is a hearing that proves that that's a blatant lie that they've been perpetuating so that the communities can accept the trans factor.
I'm a detransitioner. Another way to put that would be, I used to believe that I was born in the wrong body, and the adults in my life whom I trusted affirmed my belief, and this caused me lifelong, irreversible harm. I speak to you today as a victim of one of the biggest medical scandals in the history of the United States of America. I speak to you in the hope that you will have the courage to bring the scandal to an end and ensure that other vulnerable teenagers, children, and young adults don't go through what I went through. At the age of 12, I began to experience what my medical team would later diagnose as gender dysphoria. I was well into an early puberty, and I was very uncomfortable with the changes that were happening to my body. I was intimidated by male attention, and when I told my parents that I felt like a boy, in retrospect, all I meant was that I hated puberty, that I wanted this newfound sexual attention to go away, that I looked up to my brothers a little bit more than I did to my sisters. I came out as transgender in a letter I sent on the dining room table. My parents were immediately concerned. They felt like they needed to get outside help from medical professionals, but this proved to be a mistake. It immediately set our entire family down a path of ideologically motivated deceit and coercion. The gender specialist I was taken to see told my parents that I needed to be put on puberty-blocking drugs right away. They asked my parents a simple question: would you rather have a dead daughter or a living transgender son? The choice was enough for my parents to let their guard down, and in retrospect, I can't blame them. This was the moment that we all became victims of so-called gender-affirming care. I was fast-tracked onto puberty blockers and then testosterone. The resulting menopausal-like hot flashes made focusing on school impossible. I still get joint pains and weird pops in my back, but they were far worse when I was on the blockers. A month later, when I was 13, I had my first testosterone injection. It's caused permanent changes to my body. My voice will forever be deeper, my jawline sharper, my nose longer, my bone structure permanently masculinized, my Adam's apple more prominent, my fertility unknown. I look in the mirror sometimes and I feel like a monster.
Dear Jesus, this is sad. This is very, very sad. To consider that parents, I have a saying. If you have read my YouTube channel, you would have seen that I'm a father of 4 daughters. I'm a husband. So I have a saying to my children from time to time that I'm not your friend. And this is important. It doesn't mean I don't play with them. I've got games here that I play with my kids from time to time. But that's not the point of the statement. The point of the statement is to draw a boundary where children know the things that they can share with you and the things that they cannot share with you. Now, some people will come up with all manner of psychological mumbo jumbo to say, if you say things like that to your children, it will create a boundary. It's a healthy boundary. Believe you me, because when a child comes to you, they respect your authority. But if you have not set boundaries and you treat children like your friends, then you start taking everything they say to you seriously, right? Like it's the end of the world. Why did these parents in the first place subject this child who was just going through puberty to psychology? Remember, psychology is not a science. If you don't believe me, you can check out on Google psychology, the study of a science. That study came to a conclusion that psychology is not a science at all. So what is it then that would lead parents to want to entrust their children to psychology? That doesn't make sense to me. Have these parents not been through puberty themselves? Do they not know that puberty is not necessarily pleasant, particularly for girls? There are a lot of changes that are taking place in your body at that time. And as a parent, you need to be on the alert. You need to be aware of every single change, and you need to discuss those things with your child and give them the necessary required reassurance. But one thing you certainly don't need to do is to deny reality and mainstream delusion that it is possible for a girl to become a boy or a boy to become a girl. This is a problem in society. Now suddenly up is down. And then listen to what this child is sharing with us. When she looks herself in the mirror, she sometimes thinks that she is a monster. Such a beautiful girl who can no longer have children because of all the hormones that were pumped into her body as she's still 19 years old. This is a very sad story. And by the way, this is just one example out of multitudes of children that have been forced through this so-called transitioning, this so-called gender-affirming care. And you have people who are wearing this pride flag all over, telling us that to point these things out is being transphobic. Really? Is it being transphobic when you are literally trying to save the lives and the future that will be ruined for children? Is it transphobic when you're trying to preserve women's sport and say that people who were born biological men should not partake in women's sports? What was all the fight that we put up against abuse of women? What was all those fights for? If today I as a man can just identify to be a girl and be allowed to compete with women, that does not make sense. Not at all. So today you find that, for example, in the US, you have so many people who have been identified themselves as women. For example, the gentleman that is a father, a stepfather to the Kardashians, has changed his gender. Kris Jenner, or Bruce Jenner rather, is now called Caitlyn Jenner. And for some strange reason in America, he was made a Woman of the Year. I mean, what about all the women that have been women all their lives? And he, just for becoming a woman for that 1 year, he became a Woman of the Year. And these things don't make sense to me. Maybe they do make sense to you guys. But I mean, the truth of the matter is this. Even Bruce is on record clearly stating, or Caitlyn is on record clearly stating, that biological men who went through puberty should never be allowed to compete with women. Why? Because men are generally stronger than women. There are exceptions to the rule, but the norm or the rule is men are stronger than women physically. And therefore, when it comes to competitive sports, men are always going to come up tops, whether it be soccer, football, as in football that they play in America, or it doesn't matter, it could be hockey for that matter. I mean, there is a story which I've looked for the video for the purposes of this one and I couldn't find it, where this trans woman, meaning a man born biological male, hit a ball. A biological male was playing with women because they now identify as a woman. They hit a ball so hard that it shattered the nose of the woman on the other side. I mean, think about that. We are literally stronger than women. We're not supposed to be in sport with women, right? Think about the world champion that won. In fact, that one I can show it to you.
Canadian Powerlifting Union is just going to take your word for it. If you want to compete with the women and you're a biological male, you just tell them, I identify as a woman, and they'll let you compete. So this policy allowed trans women to compete with women in powerlifting. Now, this is Annie Andrews. She was the record holder in women's powerlifting in Canada. The record for a bench press that she held was 275 pounds. Now, Annie Andrews won 8 out of 9 competitions she entered in the women's category over the past 4 years. So now enter Avi Silverberg. He goes to the women's competition and he says, well, hey, even though I look like this, I identify as a woman. And he is allowed to compete in the women's competition. He then goes on to shatter Annie Andrews' record of 275 pounds on the bench press by bench pressing nearly 370 pounds, making him the current women's record holder by nearly 100 pounds. Now here's the video of him going and breaking the women's bench pressing record in Canada with a lift of 370 pounds. Check it out. Yeah.
Okay, so did you guys see that? Is that fair? Is that not an attempt to destroy women's sports? Let me show you some more.
New Zealand has chosen the first transgender athlete to compete at its Olympic Games. Laurel Hubbard is a female weightlifter who will be in Tokyo next month. Supporters call her selection a breakthrough for the transgender community. It's also reignited a debate with critics who say it's unfair for an athlete who used to compete with men to participate in women's sports. MTS Taya has the story.
For the headline-making and barrier-breaking weightlifter, all she wants to do is compete.
I am who I am. I'm not here to change the world. I just want to, be me and just, do what I do.
43-year-old Laurel Hubbard, who transitioned from male to female in 2012, is considered a serious medal contender after being selected to represent her home country, New Zealand, at the Tokyo Games.
She is a very dedicated and resilient athlete and on balance.
Now, what chances do biological women have against this male? What chances are there? What's the purpose of all of this madness? Okay, one maybe or two more examples.
All new tonight, call her Admiral. Former State Health Secretary Dr. Rachel Levine making history again. She is now the first female and openly transgender four-star officer with the U.S. Public Health Service Commissioned Corps. Pittsburgh's Action News 4 anchor Mike Clark has the story live in the newsroom now. Mike.
So as you heard, Rachel Levine is a man that transitioned to becoming a female and now is regarded as becoming the first female admiral. So imagine then that Donald Trump in the same America identifies as a female tomorrow. And not just a female, but a black female. Does it mean America has had its first black female president? Do you see anything wrong with this picture? Okay, look, this is one area that I really would like for you guys to give comments on, to like the video and to share it, because this is a subject that has been politicized, and I do not believe we need politics here. Because, for an example, you have girls who are being forced to change with boys who have penises, right? Just simply because they are identifying as girls. That's ridiculous. Surely you can see what's wrong with that picture. You don't believe me? Check this out. Oh no, maybe I shouldn't show you that because YouTube is gonna then want me to classify this video for children or to put an age restriction, and I don't like those videos because I don't think they do so well. Nevertheless, guys, that's my rant on this one. You tell me what you think. Do you think that children should be allowed to be affirmed in their delusion? One thing I learned as a parent from my own parents was that, first and foremost, children do not know very much. They know very little about the world. Theirs is to be shaped. That is why we send them to school, to be shaped by teachers, not to be taught about sex. That is a responsibility of the parent. However, in case you have not been paying attention, the African National Congress has been trying to teach our children about sex, not just normal sex, but gay sex. This is already happening in this country that I'm doing the news for today, that is America. Remember, my channel is not only Mzansi News, it's Mzansi News and the US of A. And this is important because there is a saying in English that when the US sneezes, the whole world catches the flu, right? We saw that with COVID. We saw that with the recession in 2008 when the banks had a run in America and how it affected all our economies. We saw now with the madness that Sleepy Joe supplanted Trump or replaced Trump as a president. What happened to the rent? What happened to our fuel hikes and the food and so on and so forth, right? So it's very important for us to take time from time to time to learn about what is happening in America until such time that when the America sneezes, it doesn't affect all of us. Okay, your comments on this one would certainly be appreciated. Do you think that people feeling or identifying, maybe my parting shot should be to leave you with this video where this guy identifies as a motorbike, he's a motorcyclist, but he identifies as a cyclist, right? Only to compete with cyclists and win. And you tell me that this identification process is actually reasonable. Maybe that should be my pattern shot. Let me show you the video.
So I just talk in this thing and it records my voice?
Yeah, it's a microphone.
Okay. Hello.
The video is obviously brought to us by the courtesy of Babylon B.
My name is Norm Hiccup. I am a bicyclist, and this is my story.
Everyone knew the name Norm Hiccup in the motorcycle world. Back then, when you thought about motorcycles, you'd think Harley Davidson, you'd think two wheels, and you'd think Norm Hiccup.
Oh yeah, of course I knew Norm. You know, if there was a race, Norm was there racing. Racing and racing and racing and losing. That guy lost a lot.
Hey, guys! It's not a race! Slow down!
It was a race, and he knew that.
Great race, guys. But you shouldn't go that fast. You need to slow down.
Why are you like huffing and puffing, bro?
I don't know.
I honestly don't even know why he competed. I think he just owned a motorcycle.
He was the Michael Jordan of losing. And then, the craziest thing happened.
So, it was shortly after losing your, what was it, 65th motorcycle race that it happened?
Well, it's completely unrelated to losing my 65th motorcycle race.
But it happened directly after a loss, right?
Unrelated things happen after other unrelated things all the time. That's a common expression.
Why don't you just tell us what happened?
I had always known that something about me was different. There was something wrong. It was as if I had something inside of me as a motorcyclist that I needed to let out. After a lot of thought and reflection, and in no way related to the number of motorcycle races I lost, I finally realized that my life as a motorcyclist was a lie. I was a bicyclist.
A man by the name of Norm Hiccup has made history
Hey, this is the
today.
Handlebar Podcast, and today we're talking about Norm
As a
Hiccup.
tractor-driving dentist, I feel Norm really represents the trans vehicle.
I love Norm.
Joining the race is Norm Hiccup. Wait, I thought he raced motorcycles.
I never felt better. Free to be my true self. Live my truth. Just be me.
And win races.
Completely unrelated. But now that you mention it, the craziest thing happened. I started winning races. Can you believe it? Things were looking up. I was finally me, the real me, and separately, coincidentally.
Okay, you guys, I have to stop that there because I think you get the picture. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share it with as many as possible. Give me your opinion down below. Have a lovely one. Bye.